Cool. All right. This is the Gateway API meeting for November 6th. Oh, wow. September 16. Wow. I'm all over the place today. Whoops. Just brief check. Is my screen actually being shared right now, or did I mess that up somehow?
Yeah, I cannot see it, no.
All right. I messed it up. Let's try again. Uh,
Now I see it.
better. All right. Sweet. I'm not sure how anyway, whatever. We're back. So this is Gateway API meeting. We've got very light agenda today. So as always, feel free to add anything to community meeting notes. Drop those in chat. Also, what I should mention is if we have anyone new to the call that wants to say hi, introduce themselves, leave a few minutes to do that. No pressure.
No pressure at all. Hi, I'm Liam.
Hey.
I don't usually join these meetings because I have a child that needs to be dropped off to school literally as these meetings occur.
Oh, no.
But it's school holidays, so I get to join them and start having a look at being a SIG Network contributor. The API gateway is something that I'm very passionate about because I've had problems with dealing with ingresses and TLS routes and everything that the gateway API looks to solve very cleanly. So I'm excited about helping out wherever I can.
That's awesome. Very, very cool. What time zone are you in, out of curiosity?
I'm in Australia, so I'm in Brisbane. So that's
Oh,
GMT plus 10. So it's currently 8:05 a.m. for
Yeah.
me.
I was just telling Nick we need more people. We had a larger contingent from Australia before, so yeah, welcome.
We don't have
I
many
do
people.
I do apologize though, mate. I think your meeting will be confusing because in a few weeks it will move 1 hour later when the US finishes daylight savings.
Oh, that's right. Daylight savings is a thing. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
even better for
And
me though, because next month I'll be able to join them even
yeah,
with school holidays not
yes.
on. So that's
Yes.
excellent.
Yeah. And then for me, once New South Wales moves to our own daylight savings, it moves another hour later and it becomes 10 a.m.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, and I think as same as last year in the US, daylight savings falls at the same time as KubeCon. Need to double check, but yeah, anyway, so it'll be disorienting. Um, all right. With that, just actually, anyone else that's new that wants to introduce themselves? No pressure. All right, cool. With that, really, really light agenda. As I mentioned in Slack last week, sometime we're aiming for RC1 today. It was going to be earlier this afternoon, but variety of things happen that mean it's going to happen immediately after today's meeting, but it should still be today, at least in Pacific time. Yeah, so there's a change log, not a whole lot. Well, I mean, there is a lot in here. A huge thanks to Nick for a work of art in terms of a change log. There's a lot that went into this one. The change log itself has, well, a lot in here. Won't cover everything there. The other thing that's probably of note to people that care, we're finally updating Kubernetes dependencies to 131. That's a long time coming, but trying to get that out before RC1. And the other detail, Gaurav finally, well, officially made the PR to remove Gateway Cuddle from this. Again, trying to get it out before RC1. And that means that Gateway Cuddle is moving off to its own repo. Thank you, Gaurav, for making that reality.
Yeah, that's where Karov.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that's it. So as always, well, I should mention why we're doing the release when we did are in the SIG Network meeting on Thursday of last week. We ran this by everyone again and basically said, hey, we're going to give you over the weekend, and if we don't hear anything, we're going to release on Monday. We have not heard anything. The consensus was generally positive on Thursday, so we are moving forward. So lazy consensus for the win. And last thing is, just please help us test this out. This is just, standard release candidate. We're hoping we can minimize the time between release candidate 1 and final release. But to do that, we really need some level of confidence that at least a couple implementations have tried this out and it's working with them. They're passing tests, whatever it is, before we can really confidently release this further. One other thing that I know there's not a ton of overlap between this meeting time and the previous meeting time last week, so there'll be a little bit of repetition here for anyone who is on both meetings. But we've been talking about how we can make the blog post more useful. Usually we do a Kubernetes blog post every time we do a Gateway API release. And one of the things we talked about in last week's meeting was the idea of holding off on a blog post. So instead of publishing a blog post the day we release Gateway API, publishing, say, a month later with the goal of having several implementations that already have support. So we can say, not just is this release ready, but you can actually try this release out with, this implementation or that implementation. Let's say, not to pick on Arco, but Envoy Gateway tends to be one of the faster ones. I talked with him a bit about this, but any others that might be able to align with releases, I think it would be great to make it a little bit less abstract. Yeah. Anyone against holding off on a blog post until we have one or more implementations of the API?
No, that makes sense to me.
Cool. All right. Well, that's easy enough.
Set a target date for it so the implementations can plan for when they want to get support by.
Yes, exactly. So my rough idea would be to aim for 4 weeks after the release date, but open to feedback from owners of implementations. I don't want it to become so stale that it's, oh, we released this thing 3 months ago, and but so something like relatively quick in the ballpark of 4 weeks. But yeah, Arco saying +1. Any additional feedback is welcome. Cool.
Yeah, I would say something like 4 weeks from the release date or 3 implementations, whichever is first.
Yep. Sounds good. Then okay, I think I'll try and capture some notes here. Then there's an agenda item from Adam, or
yeah, Adam was talking about this in the channel. Adam has been, I think, and Mike, you raised this question as well about this layer 3 routes idea. But yeah, I think Adam sort of codified it the best in this gist. This comes back to the question that we talked about in the early days of Gateway API, but haven't revisited much about what would happen if your layer 7 implementation of Gateway API wants to be able to use some other implementations, layer 4 gateway, as the means of getting traffic to it. Basically, if you don't want to have any service of type load balancers in the loop, in the glorious future where cloud providers implement direct support, layer 4 support for gateway with TCP route or whatever. How would you, as an implementation, be able to signal to another implementation that you want a gateway created to handle your layer 4 stuff? So yeah, I think Adam's idea here is to have like a service route that that does the same, that basically routes to a cluster IP. So that would be a layer 4 thing, a layer 3 thing that routes to a cluster IP. When we have talked about this before, doing layer 3 routing using gateway, the gateway object is tricky because port is a required field, and layer 3 does not have any concept of ports. So that's why I said in that thread that we'd need another object, basically. I think. But yeah, I think I just wanted to bring this up again and say we definitely have talked about this. One of the original goals of one of the reasons why we moved from this being called Ingress v2 to being Services API to then being Gateway API is because we wanted to be able to handle both Ingress and Service Type Load Balancer. So both Ingress and Service Type Load Balancer are awesome designs that are very magic. There's a lot of you just make this small request and something happens, but there's not a lot of both of them share the fault that there's not enough structured config available in the spec to sort of be able to request a bunch of stuff. I think load balancer services have grown a bunch of things over the years that have helped a little bit, but ideally I know for me, it was always my hope that one day you would be able to have like a layer 7 gateway backed by a layer 4 gateway. And we always deferred that discussion to a later date when we got further ahead with layer 4. Philip.
So we're actually we actually have an L4 route right now that we're kind of POCing and that we'll be able to kind of demo to the group as a concept. And, I was thinking, and we do, my product, the service proxy, we do the load balancer, the ingress, and the service. Like we knock out kubectl too, or kube proxy. It seems to me like you could do something like an L4 route where you do supply a port and then just direct it to have the endpoint have essentially some kind of a route that routes it to in that route, you could say to route it to a gateway.
Right. Yep.
Right, and that gateway could be somebody else's gateway. It could be your own gateway, or is that a different gateway, right? And then the gateway has its IP, right? So you could just route it there using the same port that you configured in the L4 route, because it's unlikely that somebody really wants a true L3 route. We did talk about if there was a way to kind of reconstruct the OSS layers. But anyway, that's my thought.
Yeah, I think that using a gateway that's for a layer 7 implementation as a back end for a layer 4 gateway seems like a relatively reasonable way to make something like this work without needing to refer to like load balancer services. That
and
we
and the nice
sorry.
It's not that pertinent, but we are doing it. What we're doing is actually an L4 route rather than a separate TCP or UDP route. So it also makes it a little bit simpler because you could, for protocol, you could have it be TCP or UDP, and just sort of not have that first load balancer type thing be doing really anything other than just handing you the traffic.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in what that looks like if you ever get time to share. Love to see what you're doing.
We should be able to demo it in October. Yeah.
Cool. That should be good timing because October is a big month for us. This is going to be our second release where we're going through the release cycle that we've defined. And that means that October is going to be release scoping time. So we'll be trying to think of what are the most important things to be doing next in Gateway API. So it'd be a good time to present these kinds of ideas. Yeah,
and I'd say, and I'd want to remind everyone that goes for everybody. Release scoping is going to be the time where if you have new ideas we need to talk about, then that's going to be the time to do it. Yeah, but yeah, so yes, I definitely wanted to make sure just to service this discussion, because I think yeah, like I think Antonio said in that thread, something like a gateway API has to find a way to decouple from services, and I 100% agree. Ideally, you should be able to do everything that the layer 7 gateway wants to be able to do without needing a load balancer service to be created.
Cool. Good discussion.
Yeah.
Just since it came up, and I think it is pertinent, release cycle, we're about to start round 2 of this, and we said, hey, we're going to reevaluate before we get to the next one of if the release cycle makes sense, if there's changes we should make. I know one of the things that I had heard, I think maybe Mike had suggested, is that some of our timing should be adjusted. Like some phases may be longer than they need to be. That's useful feedback. If others have feedback like that of what phases we should adjust, if the phases make sense, any and all feedback welcome before we finalize the next release cycle, which will probably start immediately after we get 1.2 out, which is very soon. Cool. All right. Well, we are already on to the very last thing. This is a quick one. This is just a really nitpicky PR, I would say. No fault of the PR, but this is like way in the weeds of API machinery, is what I would say. It's whether or not we should make the group field and local object reference optional. I think that may end up being a bad idea. So I left a comment that suggested we may have some unintended consequences, because we have, basically this, we use it in a few places that you wouldn't expect the default to be empty or core, because like the very strange default in Kubernetes is API group is, of empty string means core. And we don't really want that in either of the cases we're using it right now. Yeah, anyway, so I think this may have been well intended, but maybe not quite what we want.
So a lot of that is on me, because I was like, yeah, go ahead. I thought it was a good idea. So I think your points are fair. But Mike, did you want to say something?
Oh, just agreed with this. I think that specifically when you start looking at the other examples where we have this defaulted, as Rob cited here, like those are typically more specific reference types used in a single place where we're defaulting kind as well, and it makes a lot more sense. I hate the UX of the Kubernetes empty string core group. But yeah, agreed that it would be more awkward to start defaulting this to something that we probably don't want to use in some cases.
I mean, my feeling was that defaulting this to optional just means that it lets you, if you mean core, not have to have group : empty string. Yeah, it just means if you want to reference a service, you just put service, right? Like, which mimics the behavior in many other parts of Kubernetes where unspecified means core, means included in tree, or default API group. So yeah, and I guess in the case that we made it just empty string, then we're not really adding a default. What we're doing is making it so that in the sense that we're just making it so that you don't have to specify an empty string to be able to get core. Because right now, when you want to, if you do want to specify a core, you have to know about the fact that empty string means core, and you have to specifically specify group empty string. which is, I think, which feels like a weird sharp edge for someone who doesn't know all of this detail about how the API machinery works. Whereas making group optional means that it's not so much that you're defaulting to core, it means that you're keeping the same behavior, where if you're doing anything other than core, you have to specify the group. But if you're not doing that, you don't have to specify an empty string. And that was why I said, yeah, go ahead with making it optional, because it's not like we're adding a default to gateway.networking for group. It's we're just it feels like it's just a UX change to me, because I don't think that in the event that you did want to use it in other places, and you didn't want it to be core, then you're still going to have to specify the group in both cases. And this just makes it a little bit more like more core objects, in that if you don't specify a group, then you get core.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think where we've left off is just that where we do have defaults, kind of as Mike mentioned, they have a different behavior, right? Like it's a default group and kind, and so just to have a default group could lead to some confusion somewhere. But yeah, at a minimum, I think we should have, if we do want to have a default group, we should have like a specific kind for that is like core local object reference. I don't know, some kind of, I don't know. It's like we already, as if we don't have enough local object reference types.
Yeah, I mean,
but
like, I think practically, right, like the two places where we're using local object ref, right, like extension ref and CA certificate refs. CA certificate refs will actually be easier to use if you don't have to supply empty string. Extension ref, almost certainly you're not going to be using core, but in both cases you would still have to specify the group. Like, so you'd still have to specify whatever group you're using. And if for some reason you were using like an extension ref that was like a config map, then again you'd come back to the same thing, because CA certificate refs is a secret, and it's not a TLS secret, but it's a secret usually.
I think the biggest thing is that if you don't, like, as much as the end result is you have to specify a group, in one case you're not warned that you forgot to specify a group, you just left it out, and oh, okay, well, whatever, and something's not working for you, and it's maybe not quite as obvious.
Look, I mean, we can always change our mind on this later, right? Like if you want to change this to rather than unspecified or empty string, just to empty string, sure, we can go ahead with that. But like, honestly, like, I feel like having to type out group : empty string, like, is a way suckier UX than very occasionally having a weird thing happen because you accidentally said core group when you meant some other group that you didn't specify, right? Like, I feel like the sharp edge of having to specify an empty group is worse than the sharp edge of maybe getting something wrong sometime in the future. But like, if other folks really feel strongly about it, then I'm not gonna like hold it up. But like, that's why I said it's okay that
no, it makes sense.
Makes it sharper. Yeah.
Nick and I have been monopolizing this conversation, so if anyone else wants to jump in, by all means, or we can also take this offline too if it's just Nick and I. I don't want to waste everyone's time. All right. One last thing, very quickly, back to this release cycle. KubeCon is coming up. It is, let's say that we release 1.2 on September 30-ish. That seems in the right ballpark of when it will get released. That means that KubeCon is going to be around 6 weeks out from there, very approximately on all counts. That means that scoping, depending on how we do it, scoping could be like at the very tail end or it could already be over and we could just be iterating on a well-defined set of gaps. No need to answer that in this meeting, but just something to think about as we're trying to set the timing up for 1.2, what we want to be doing for the people that are able to make it to KubeCon, Or maybe if you're not able to make it to KubeCon, that's an argument in favor of let's get the scope out of the way before we get to KubeCon, because not everyone can make it.
I would say the other direction is that it's pretty common that at KubeCon we'll have interesting discussions that may end up changing what we want to do in the release. So I would actually say there's a bit of an argument for extending the scoping for like a week or two for this one, so that we can allow KubeCon to fall within scoping rather than within iteration.
Yeah, that's fair. For people who can't make it to KubeCon, assuming that we try to keep scoping open until then, we'll try to make sure that anyone who can't be there has a voice and a vote in terms of what is important and what is not. Just like last time, how we tried to get everyone with a vote and a voice and what matters. Want to keep that up. Yeah. But with that, I think that's everything on the agenda, and we're at 30 minutes early. So unless anyone has anything else, have some free time back, and we'll call that good. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone. See ya.
Bye, guys.